All right, welcome back. So let's dive right into this explainer and totally demystify the ACCA Advanced Financial Management exam. We're taking the absolute best insights from expert tutor Andrew Maware, combining them with high-yield study notes from ACCA affiliate Rohan, and distilling the whole shebang right here. If your goal is to conquer AFM, you're definitely in the right place.
We've got a really clear battle plan for today. Section 1 will meet the AFM beast. Section 2 is all about those high-yield concepts. Section 3 covers strategic pre-exam preparation, and we'll wrap up with Section 4, exam day survival rules. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Meet the AFM beast. Why advanced financial management is a massive step up.
You know, what's really fascinating about AFM is that it's just a completely different monster compared to that basic financial management paper you've taken before. It requires a fundamental shift in how you think. You're moving way beyond simple net present values to calculating the actual financing side effects using adjusted present value, or APV. And instead of just a basic weighted average cost of capital, you're now adjusting beta for financial leverage, literally ungearing industry betas to find asset betas, and then re-gearing them for your specific project. Oh, and simple hedging? Yeah, that evolves into complex real options, currency swaps, and money market hedges. It's a huge jump.
But honestly, beyond the heavy technicals, AFM is universally infamous for its relentless time pressure. Like expert tutor Andrew Maware puts it, you are absolutely not going to have 10 minutes spare at the end to put your feet up and think about what you want for dinner. The time goes by in a flash, and managing that intense pressure is literally half the battle here.
Section 2. Master high-yield concepts. The core technical arsenal you must know.
Okay, so let's step onto the actual battlefield and look at the high-yield technical weapons you absolutely must have in your arsenal. We're going to lean on some brilliant one-line triggers from Rohan's notes to really lock these concepts into your brain. First up is APV. This is a massive heavy hitter in the exam. The crucial thing to remember here is that it isolates the base project value from how you actually finance it. So instead of mushing everything into a WAC, you calculate the base case assuming it's all equity financed, and then you explicitly add or subtract the present value of the financing side effects. Think things like the tax shield on debt minus the issue costs, plus any subsidized loan benefits.
Now, if you get an APB question, and there's a good chance you will, you absolutely have to follow this exact step-by-step flow to maximize your partial method marks. First, calculate your ungeared cost of equity using CAPM. Next, discount those cash flows to get your base case. Then, completely separately, calculate your tax shield, add your subsidies, and subtract those issue costs. Structuring your answer exactly like this, it just makes it incredibly easy for the examiner to dish out the marks.
Moving on, what's really cool is how real options totally reframe our thinking. A standard NPV assumes a super rigid path, right? But real options test your grasp of management flexibility. You can actually adjust your NPV upward based on having the option to delay, expand, abandon, or switch. Remember, flexibility adds value. If you spot one of these options hiding in a scenario, you need to point out that a standard NPV is actually understating the project's true potential.
Business valuation is another massive chunk of the syllabus. You've got to be able to seamlessly pivot between free cash flow to firm, the dividend growth model, PE multiples, and asset-based models, all depending on the specific scenario you're handed. So for instance, you'd use the dividend model for companies with really stable dividend policies, but you'd switch over to a DCF approach for companies that have mature, highly predictable free cash flows.
And hey, if you run into a mergers and acquisitions question, synergy is everything. Synergy is just that extra value created from the merger. It's the whole idea that 2 plus 2 suddenly equals 5. This could come from revenue cross-selling, cost economies of scale, or financial tax shields. The golden rule you need to memorize here? An acquirer should only ever pay a premium for a target company if the calculated synergy is actually greater than that premium.
Section 3, Strategic Pre-Exam Preparation, your training ground for success.
While theory is great and all, but how you actually train for this highly pressurized exam is just as crucial as knowing your formulas. I mean, knowing the valuation models back to front won't save you if you completely freeze up when the clock starts. So how exactly do we fix that? How do we build that essential muscle memory?
The secret weapon here is the mock review method. You need strictly timed practice right inside the ACCA software environment, or at the very least, in Excel. Like Andrew Maware advises, you need to turn a strict timer on and literally put your phone in another room so notifications don't derail you. Do not hit pause. And the most important part? Follow it up with a brutal, honest review of your mistakes. You're going to learn way more from identifying your concept gaps right here than from just staring at a textbook for hours.
Section 4. Exam Day Survival Rules. Tactics to Conquer the Final Boss.
Now imagine it's exam day. You're sitting at your desk, the timer is ticking down, and you need ironclad rules to survive the next 3 hours. This is absolutely my favorite piece of advice, straight from Andrew. Perfectionism will kill your AFM score. Some calculations in this exam are honestly nearly impossible, and very few students will nail them. If a calculation gets insanely hard, just make a number up, guess, and keep swimming. Why? Because of the own figure rule. Even if your initial number is completely wrong, you're still going to get method marks for using that wrong number correctly in the steps that follow.
Next up, to make sure you pick up those crucial professional communication marks, you have to strictly compartmentalize your work. All your math, including complex beasts like the Black-Scholes option pricing model, goes straight into the spreadsheet. But your full sentence analysis, your conclusions, and spelling out your assumptions, those belong in the word processor. Please don't write huge chunky paragraphs of text in the spreadsheet. Keep it to brief labels so the examiner can actually find your brilliance.
Also, remember that the scenario exhibits are definitely not just background noise. They are literal cheat codes. They contain the exact context you need to score your commercial acumen and professional skills marks. If an exhibit tells you an industry is highly competitive and struggling, they aren't just sharing fun facts. They desperately want to see if you'll actively incorporate that specific risk into your final written advice to the board. Now, I want to pose a pretty terrifying question about time management, just to prove why you must attempt every single part of this paper. What actually happens if you get bogged down trying to be perfect and you just skip an entire 25-mark question?
Well, if you miss a 25-mark question, you now have to score 50 out of the remaining 75 marks, meaning you suddenly need 2/3 of your paper to be perfectly correct just to barely scrape a pass instead of just half. By skipping a question, you've accidentally set yourself an almost impossible mathematical challenge.
So, the golden rules of the battlefield are pretty simple and you should definitely memorize them. Answer absolutely everything, even if you're straight up guessing, just to trigger that own figure rule. Don't spend excessive time hunting for one missing variable. Write your discussions out in full sentences because there are no half marks in AFM for a vague 5-word bullet point. And finally, use headings to structure your text. Make it totally effortless for the examiner to give you points.
The final verdict: becoming an AFM conqueror.
All right, we've broken down the beast, armed you with high-yield technicals like APV and real options, and laid out the survival rules for the exam room. But your success ultimately comes down to a single choice. This exam relies heavily on panic and perfectionism to slow you down. So how are you going to react when that clock starts ticking? Will you freeze up trying to find the perfect number? Or will you trust your preparation, rely on the own figure rule, and just keep swimming? The choice is entirely yours. Best of luck with your studies, and we'll see you in the next explainer.